In April 1945, after nearly 6 years of global conflict, the Red Army is massing along the Oder River, 60 kilometers from the German capital. The Soviet strategy relies on overwhelming force. 3 army groups are preparing to advance and completely envelop the city. But the timing of the offensive is driven by politics, not logistics. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin is rushing the attack ahead of schedule, driven by a deep paranoia that the advancing British and American forces will capture Berlin first. To take the city, the Soviet Union has assembled 2.5 million men, 6,000 tanks, and 40,000 artillery pieces. Defending Berlin is a desperate, disorganized force of roughly 1 million men. This includes depleted SS divisions, but also the Volkssturm, a hastily assembled militia made mostly of old men and young boys. With millions of civilians still trapped inside the city, the approaching assault guarantees massive civilian casualties. Retreat is impossible. The resulting collision will be one of the bloodiest urban sieges in history. Before dawn on April 16th, the assault begins. Thousands of Soviet guns open up on German positions at the Silo Heights, raining shells into the darkness. Facing immense political pressure for a quick victory, Marshal Georgy Zhukov makes a critical tactical error. Impatient with his struggling infantry, he orders his tank armies to push directly through their lines and up the muddy, heavily defended inclines. The result is instant chaos. Tanks bottleneck on the narrow roads, turning into easy targets for German gunners. The Soviets take immense casualties battering their way up the heights, but after 3 days of fighting, their sheer numerical advantage cracks the German line. With the line broken, Soviet forces cut off the German Ninth Army east of the city. Trapped in a shrinking perimeter known as the Halbe Pocket, tens of thousands of German troops and civilians attempt a desperate, disorganized escape through the forests under constant air attack. The collapse of these outer defenses marks a grim turning point. The battle loses any semblance of conventional frontline combat, degenerating into a chaotic, close-quarter slaughter with no quarter given. Looking at this map from April 25th, we see the Red Army has entirely encircled Berlin. The final supply lines are severed. Day by day, Soviet forces squeeze this perimeter tighter, pushing the fighting directly into dense residential streets. To navigate the ruined city blocks, the Red Army relies on tactics honed years earlier in Stalingrad. They deploy specialized assault groups, small, self-contained units combining infantry, combat engineers, flamethrowers, and self-propelled guns to clear buildings room by room. In response, the German defense fragments into isolated strongpoints. Makeshift barricades block the avenues, and small teams hide in the rubble, using handheld anti-tank rockets known as Panzerfausts to ambush Soviet armor. Above ground, the crossfire destroys entire neighborhoods. Over 2 million civilians are forced to hide in disease-ridden subway tunnels and massive concrete anti-aircraft fortresses called flak towers, enduring a hellish existence without food or clean water. As the city burns, discipline on both sides collapses entirely. SS officers begin executing their own soldiers for perceived cowardice, while Soviet troops commit mass looting and widespread violence, including the rape of over 100,000 women in the city. The Red Army pushes relentlessly into the Z-Zone, the central government district. Here they assault the Reichstag, Germany's former parliament building, enduring 3 days of extreme casualties just to capture a burned-out symbolic shell. While the street fighting rages above, an entirely different reality exists below ground. In the claustrophobic concrete of the Führer bunker, Adolf Hitler refuses to accept defeat, repeatedly demanding counterattacks from decimated armies that no longer follow his orders. On April 30th, after marrying Eva Braun, Hitler commits suicide. Without him, the remaining German command structure immediately disintegrates, and top Nazi officials scramble to negotiate or flee. The promised 1,000-year Reich does not end in a coordinated, heroic final stand. It ends with absolute administrative collapse, leaving regular soldiers to die in the streets while their leaders take their own lives. On May 2, 1945, the commander of Berlin's defenses, General Helmuth Weidling, officially surrenders the ruined city and the remnants of his forces. Just over 2 weeks of fighting extracts a staggering human cost. At least 80,000 Soviet troops are killed. German military deaths near 100,000, alongside tens of thousands of civilian casualties buried in the rubble. For the Soviet Union, it is the decisive conclusion to the Great Patriotic War. Raising the hammer and sickle over the Reichstag provides a definitive image of retribution and absolute victory. In the immediate aftermath, the victorious Allied powers carved the city into distinct occupation zones, assigning sectors to the Soviets, Americans, British, and French. The fall of Berlin is the final blow to Nazi Germany, but it also physically traces the geographic fault lines of the next global conflict. The borders drawn in the rubble of the city will soon harden into the Iron Curtain, locking Europe into a tense 45-year standoff.